Hello, friends, and welcome to Experience AV episode number 10.
Yes.
Double digits. I am excited. I'm Jim. With me, as ever, is Jeremy. And today we are going to continue we're going to be talking about training and professional development and hopefully getting into some nitty gritty. When last we spoke, we were talking a little bit about how to encourage AV leaders in the work spot. And so today we're going to round that out with just some of the training opportunities that are out there. Everyone in AV absolutely knows the name of AVIXA and Infocom and ICIA. And that is where you definitely go to get the bulk of your AV knowledge, how to design, how to install. But there's a lot more to AV than just those. I hesitate to say basics, right? Because they get granular, they get very detailed. But then if you're an AV freak, but you want to become an AV freak, super freak, there's a lot more stuff out there. But, I mean, before we get into that, Jeremy, how are you feeling? What's new?
Good, man. I'm feeling good. Good to see you. Still enjoying the last little bits of winter here in Arizona because it goes by very quickly. I think we're gonna see 88 as a high here tomorrow. Yeah. So, man,
you break out the scarves and the hats and the mittens.
Yeah, no. It's the Arizona uniform is shorts pretty much all year long. And when it's winter time, we throw on a hoodie, So we're about to take the hoodie back off and go back to shorts and t-shirts and sandals,
Wow. Well, we got slammed with 18 inches of snow.
Whoa.
A little bit different than 88, but it was good.
That sounds cold.
It was cold, man. It was super cold for a long while. A lot of fun though. When it snows that much, it's like everything just stops. The kids go out to the big hills around us, and you meet up with all their friends, all your friends at the big hill at the schoolyard, and just have a really nice day chatting with people. The kids are doing what they're supposed to be doing, running around, getting tired, eating all sorts of different colored snow and having fun with their friends. And the adults can just kind of sit back, relax. The kids can all be seen. Everyone's safe. Everyone's good. And the adults can talk like adults for a little bit. It's nice. It was a nice weekend.
Did you drag all the scouts out into the snow for the meeting? Did it happen?
We did. It was so awesome. It was so awesome. Every time we have a scout meeting in the snow, I always get nervous. They're so little. Are they going to be all right? Are they going to do it? But we legit did compass and map reading.
Yes.
With second graders in 16 inches of snow, and we set up maps. They had to. The adventure requirements in Cub Scouts is, you've got to find yourself on a map. You've got to pick a little hike. You've got to draw your neighborhood, like make your own map, and then do some other things. And so I had brought paper, but one of my den leaders, my co-den leaders said, instead of doing it on paper, let's just have them draw it in the snow. I'm like, of course, just draw it in the snow. It was so good. So kids are drawing their houses in snow. Then we took like a little hike through snow, and literally the snow is up to their knees, and they are trudging through the snow like troopers, and it's pristine snow because who would be crazy enough to get out there? That makes me.
And they
so
were probably
happy.
Excited, like laughing and having a great, like, this is the best thing ever. You took it out of my mouth. Did you also bribe all the parents with more cocoa this year, this time around?
Well, yeah. No, you got. I mean, you got to come prepared with cocoa.
I mean, not maybe bribe. Maybe that's the wrong word.
Encourage. Healthy encouragement.
Entice. Yes, entice. I like that.
It is funny. It is funny where, obviously the scouts get to have them first, and then you offer it to the adults, and every adult was like, yeah, hit me one of those cups of cocoa over there, Jim. We deserved it. We earned it. It was good.
I got my own special little sauce to put in this cocoa. We're gonna warm it up. We're gonna warm it up.
That's right.
I love
Yeah,
it. That's awesome, man.
yeah, it
That's awesome.
was
Well, I'll
good.
tell you what, I'm gonna soiree us here because I'm also really excited about Infocom, that we actually
Oh my
are gonna get to go to Infocom and see all of our friends and
no.
fellow AV industry members and contacts and clients, and just coming back together for us, right? We had to miss last year, so this is gonna be the first time in it's 3 years. We missed last year and the year before. Like, it's been 3
Yeah,
years since we that how insane is that? We haven't
I
missed
know.
an Infocom in I don't know how long, but
I haven't missed one since 2001.
wow.
I know.
Wow. I've got a lot of folders in my email structure for all the years of,
Yes.
Infocom correspondence over the years, but even more exciting, we both are gonna get the opportunity to teach again this year. I think you are teaching CTSD prep, is that
Yes,
right?
that is
Are you
correct.
are you
CTS
co-teaching with
purpose.
anyone?
Yes, I'm not exactly sure who yet. They're undoubtedly going to be fantastic and powerful and awesome. But yeah, well, I'll be co-teaching with someone.
I'm gonna miss you this year
I
in the
know, man.
CTSD classroom, but I've been invited to teach NAVs, networked AV systems, with the powerful Paul Streffen.
I love that guy.
Pretty excited about
He's
that.
so cool. He's
Paul
such a
was
cool guy.
he was a mentor for me early on. He was a part of the CTSD training that I went through. Him and Tom
Mhm,
Care.
mhm.
Tom, it's Care. I'm with you. I understand how to pronounce your last name now. So thank you for those personal comments to help I cleared that up. Um, Not only that, but I'm not going to release what we're going to be talking about, but we submitted to talk at Infocom on a couple of topics and got accepted. One of them we get to do together,
Yes, that's gonna be fun.
and you're just gonna have to keep listening in and wait till it's published to learn more. But I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited about going to Infocom. I'm really excited to get back in the classroom and bring knowledge expansion moments to the industry, which I think is just 100% relevant to what we're talking about today.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
with that, kind of kick us back. Kick us back. Let's get started on all the wonderfulness that is AV industry training and beyond.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, obviously, we've been talking about AVIXA and with their certifications, with their breadth of just seminars that are developed and taught by volunteers at the shows. I mean, you could learn an incredible amount. Um, but I think we're all familiar with that, right? You've got a lot of it is structured around their ANSI accredited certification. So CTS for kind of general AV knowledge. They introduce you to how a typical project flow goes, who the players are, who the stakeholders are, a little bit about technology, a little bit about audio, a little bit about video, and just learning what the words are essentially. And that's how I see it. CTS is agreeing on the vocabulary of the AV industry so that we can all speak a common language.
It's almost
Uh,
like AV 101 in a
that's
way,
it. Yeah,
right? Just lay
100%.
the foundation.
Yes. Yes. And then obviously CTSD,
Well, hold
CTSI.
on. I'm gonna hold you back for just a second since you hit on CTS. Like, CTS, in your mind, what different job roles does it apply to?
My take on it is it's really anyone who needs to talk about AV should have their CTS, and I believe that's how they push it. And so certainly sales, um, uh, tech support, uh, executives, manufacturers, right? Because if you're going to be selling to the AV industry, you should know what the installers and designers are running into. You should be able to talk their language instead of just your black boxes. Um, technicians who might not be lead. I guess when you become a lead, that's when you get into the specialized PSs. But I think it's anyone who is expected to be able to intelligently talk about the AV industry. You really need your CTS.
You know, it's interesting, and I wanted to pause us for just a moment because, you know, number one, I think these certifications, this training that we're talking about right now is fundamental. It's fundamental in our industry. Kind of, it's where you start. It's one of the
Mhm.
most common places to start for individual development and learning. And I say individual versus like business focus. You know,
Yes.
it's individual skill development and individual learning. And I know that, you know, in our company, we've had some folks mention the fact that, you know, I went and took my CTS and I don't know how to terminate a cable any better than I did before. Right. And I think number one, AVIXA has done a great job of maybe correcting the way that it was marketed. But I think a lot of people thought early on, well, I'm gonna go take my CTS and I'm gonna know how to install stuff. And that's not what it
Yeah.
is, right?
No,
It
not
comes
at
back
all.
to that 101, right? You might be going to a specialized college for a specialized degree, but you still got to have your math, you still got to have your English, you still got to have like the fundamental learning. And so back to your point, it's an overview, a good detailed overview of the entire AV industry. And so I think you're right. I think it's project managers, engineers,
Yeah.
technicians, sales, anybody that's interacting with customers, anyone that's interacting with any part of the project life cycle. I mean, it's interesting because I could almost argue, and it's never been common, at least in our firm. I'd be curious if others have gone down this path. But what about like the accounting folks and the administrative folks? Although they're not directly associated with the deployment, they're associated with transactions associated with
Yeah.
AV projects. And that knowledge seems to me to be indispensable in terms of just helping get everybody aligned to how a typical AV project goes.
Yeah. And it's how it'll alter and probably improve how they interface with the team, right? Once they know what's going on, it's not just they get a trigger and they send out a PO. It's if they can appreciate and understand what's going on in the project cycle, that just it's really good for team building.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank
And
you.
well, no, and I just want to add one thing. The coolest and most frustrating thing about CTS is the language that VIXA uh, uh, has landed on. You know, because in all the different parts of the world, right? It's not even just all the different parts of the US. It's the world. We all have these different ways of explaining or we all have different words used in the project cycle. But Avixa has drawn a line in the sand, which I think is so important that this is what we are going to call this part of the project, and this is what we are going to call this stakeholder, and this is what we're going to call this task, and just taking that step to have that common language throughout the industry, I think is huge. You know, it's frustrating, right? Because if you've been in the business for 20 years and you've been calling something else besides what Avixa has defined it as, it's frustrating. You have to unlearn what you've been doing for 20 years, relearn it the way Infocom says it and states it and defines it, and then put that into use and pass the test. But also, if you're doing AV on a global scale, you can now use that internationally recognized language to talk about the project, which is incredibly helpful and incredibly valuable.
You know, you're yes, well said. I think you're hitting on just a very commonly talked about thing in folks that are going after their CTS. And to your point, I don't think it takes being in the industry for 20 years. I think it takes being in the industry for 3.5 months, you
Yeah.
know,
Yep.
and
You're
you're
right.
being exposed to some flavor of project and the way the project is ran. And there was a lot of, you know, so for example, design build, a lot of design build firms out there that don't do consultant led or design bid build type projects. And they go to the CTO and they're like, that's not how any of our projects run.
That's right.
It's like, okay, I can appreciate that stance, but I would say it to you like this. you take the most complex structured project and you use that as your common reference point, and everything else kind of fits into there. So yeah, while you might take it as in AVIXA's mind, which by the way, you called AVIXA Infocom there for a minute. I was waiting for it. We were doing so good, but
I know, man. It's
that's
gonna
one.
happen.
That's one.
I
We're gonna
can't
count 'em.
even. I
That's
know.
one. That's
I'll
one.
put $1 in a jar. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I think the mindset is like, well, it always has to be a design, bid, build. That's I don't think that's the case. But you have to establish, like you said, that common language, that common rhetoric that you can use to drive consistency at a global scale. So, even I say this empathetically, even when I first got my CTS, I was like, I've never even done a design, bid, build project. It's all design, build. Like, what are they talking about? And then you go do a design, bid, build project, and you're like, that's exactly what they're talking about. It's exactly as they described that it was going to be, right? And so, I think it's the 101 stuff. It's AV 101. It's where you start to get a really good overview of all the types of AV happening within our industry.
Yeah.
And then where do you go? Right. So you were just, I thank you for letting me slow you down here, because I
appreciate it.
I think CTS is just one of those things that it's what everybody's looking at. If you haven't started down the path of learning and knowledge gain, and it's worth noting that, Infocom, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, but it's worth noting that there was,
Yes.
yep, that was like 1.5 right
Yeah,
there.
$1.50. Yeah.
AVIXA training, right, is not focused on specific products. So it's worth like talking about right now, right? Like, where are all the places we can go to get training? There's industry, there's industry associations like AVIXA, NSCA. We'll talk about some of those, AQAV. And then there's manufacturer specific learning.
Yes.
Lots of manufacturer specific learning.
Yes.
So what we're talking about right now, again, it's like you might go into these specialized, like, hey, I want to be a Crestron guy, or I want to be an AMX guy, or I want to learn Extron, right? Like those very focused training opportunities are available from those manufacturers. But the CTS, again, is trying to give a really good broad overview that's not manufacturer specific, which I think is important, because so often in AV, we get really manufacturer specific with just about everything that we do. And the goal here is not to be manufacturer specific, but to be broader than that, to be industry layered, if you will, or industry broad, if you will. So then the next step, you were starting to touch on it. What are the next 2 certifications? Okay, so I got my CTS. I've got a broad overview of the industry. I've got my foundation built, right? Where do I go? What do I do next?
Yeah, and a lot of that comes down to what your role is, because it's an investment to get those next level certifications. It's a lot more time. The information is a lot more detailed, so it's a much larger investment than the CTS. But next is going to be CTSI, CTSD, right? And that's where you get really deep into what goes in, what the science is behind how to install systems properly and how to design systems properly. And that's huge. And they're 3-day classes, it gets deep. It gets deep. And honestly,
it's more than 3 days, actually. I mean, so install 1 and install 2 are both 3-day classes. And then just the prep, so it's good to cover this. I'm loving this as a follow-up show to our last show, because, right, we talked about how epic it was to gain knowledge and to use training as a way to grow AV leaders and to network, right? But this show is about kind of breaking down a little bit more molecularly, what is that experience like? And so CTS, for example, when I took it back in the day, it was all online. You did the class online, you did the test online. You could actually like knock it out in a weekend if you kind of gave up your whole weekend to it now. And now there's 3 or 4 classes online that you can take, and then can go take your test, but they're now ANSI certified, which huge shout out to AVIXA for bringing a internationally recognized certification product to the market. That's massive, but it came with its own set of requirements, and the biggest one being a proctored exam, right? You have to go to an exam house. Although, if I'm not mistaken, AVIXA just came out and said they're allowing exam taking at home. Like it's an exam, it's a proctored exam. Yeah, no, this email just got sent to me. So for like CTS, I'm not sure if it's for CTSI or for CTSD, but they have found a way to provide online testing that still satisfies the ANSI requirement, which is pretty awesome. That's huge. That's huge. Back to the point though. So CTS, right? You've got AV Essentials, you've got Introduction to AV, you've got several online modules that you can consume, and if that is sufficient for you to take the test, you can go take the test, sign up, pay the money, go sit for it, or apparently now be able to get it online. Once you get to CTSI, let's just focus on CTSI first. That was the first certification that I got after CTS, because of course I was focused on the physical installation of things before I got to the design side. There was install 1, and there was and we just hosted this a few years ago. We had Mr. Espinosa come out to
powerful Chuck, man.
Oh man, yeah. Whew, that beard and tattoos on those guys. Jeez. So we had Chuck come out, and it was a 2-part class. So we did install 1, and that was a 3-day class. And then we did install 2, and that was a 3-day class. And that is enough. That is enough to prepare. My understanding is that is enough to prepare you to sit for the CTSI. Now, just like CTS, if you're not prepared enough off of the online classes, or you feel like you need another layer of study, they have CTS prep, which is 3 days with an instructor, power drilling through all the information, trying to give you that extra study time, cram time before taking the test. Same thing with CTSI. You've got install 1, you've got install 2, and then I think there's a CTSI prep. I think there was at one point a CTSI prep, but AVIXA, got it right on that one, has their mindset has always been to give the learning, and then if you need that extra layer of prep, you take the prep class. It's either in person or online, live instructor led, hammering through all the info.
Yeah, and I thought that was another good move. Yeah, and that I spaced out, because when I took CTSI, it was a week at Fairfax, and it was the same thing with CTSD, where it was 2 weeks at Fairfax.
You're showing your age, Jim.
I know. But I like the fact that they have
tablets chiseled in. Just kidding. Just kidding. I'm sorry.
I like the fact that they have the prep classes, because a lot of people only have the opportunity to take these classes at Infocom the show. So if you took CTSD 1 in 2018 and then 2 in 2019, by the time you're ready to take the test, it's not fresh in your head. And so the idea is you can take all those in-depth 3-day courses, do it right, learn the stuff well, and then right before the test, take that prep class just to bring it all together in a summary, like an executive summary of sorts, and just kind of keep things top of mind, fresh in your head, so that when you hit the ground, when you take the test, you're ready to hit the ground running.
Yeah. So 100%. I mean, that is the most detailed, dense executive summary I've ever had the honor to be a part of, especially with CTSD prep. So CTSD now, so when I took CTSD, they had broken it into 3 classes.
Yes.
And they were 3 classes that were 3 days each.
Yes.
And for a minute there, they were doing it boot camp style, where you could show up to Fairfax and do 9 straight days. So it was the week, then the weekend, and then the following week. And then you'd go home and hopefully be prepared to take the test. And if you weren't prepared to take the test, then or if you felt like you just needed a little bit more, you go to a CTSD prep, which is what you and I have taught. You have taught for many years at Infocom, which is the correct term because it's the show.
The show, yes.
Yep. All right.
Yes.
And then we've taught the last couple of years, and boy, that is strapping a fire hose to many heads.
Yes.
I mean, I'm blown away at how much information we get through in 3 days. It's taking 9 days worth of content and slamming through it in 3 days as a power executive summary, as you indicated,
Yeah.
to prepare for it. And is
It's
that
intense.
that's it, right? That's and AVIXA has done such a good job of producing online content, supporting content. There's math classes, there's other little classes and modules that you can take that help, just reinforce a lot of those concepts. In fact, they have AV Math for Design specifically, which I love. I've taken it again recently for some RUs just because, it's math and I like math. But that's CTSD path, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And then that arms you. So CSD, CTSI, that arms you with enough information to do design and install. But
using all the industry best practices, right?
yes,
That's what it's designed for, is taking, and credit to AVIXA for pulling together the best of the best of the best in the industry to contribute to these classes so that it is cross-functional, is using every opportunity to bring industry best practice forward.
right. But it, and as much as we think that those classes and those certifications are specialized, which they are, I mean, there is a ton of information involved, right? Because you're talking about how to design all AV systems, so you can't spend a lot of time on a very niche or particular thing. It's like you said, it's just a fire hose, right? And you're just kind of basking in the awesomeness of that fire hose for sure. But they don't have an example. They don't have enough time to really get into how to really EQ and balance a room and spend 2 days just on that, right? And
No,
they
go pretty
expect you to
quick.
come, yeah, they expect you to come prepared with some experience so that they can touch on it. They can kind of highlight some of the cool things that and make sure we're all speaking the same language and it has to get done, and maybe some samples of it. But if you want to learn how to do that, you're not going to do that at CTSI, right? They just don't have time. You would go someplace else.
Yep. Like,
oh my God! Well, glad you asked. Like SynodCon, who I mean,
yes, Pat
yes,
Brown, whoop, whoop.
uh, and the Brown, Pat and Brenda Brown. Not only are they some of the most wonderful, warm, and nicest people that I've ever come across, but the way they are able to talk about audio blows my mind, because I'm struggling to find the words. I'm struggling to come up with metaphors and just different ways to explain what's going on with these very complex systems. And Pat Brown just able to come up with such pure and simple examples. And whenever I try to make a pure and simple example, it's got so many holes. It just doesn't work. It kind of is related to what I'm talking about, but not really. It's more funny than anything else. Whereas Pat Brown's examples, they're so boiled down, so elegant, and so simple. Like that, he is an artist when it comes to explaining audio. It's just so impressive to watch. And then in those classes, he's got this incredible set of kit where he's a master. He's a pro. He's got all the test equipment. He's got all the demo gear. He comes in with 3 racks wherever he's going. I don't know how he still has a spine, because mine would be compressed to nothing, but it's just incredible. And then if you go to SynodCon, that's where you take an EQ course. You take an intelligibility course and you spend 2 days, a full day just on that very fine. So whereas CTSD and CTSI are super wide, super broad,
A lot of
and
information.
like
Yeah.
enough. I'm not saying shallow in a bad way, but you just got all this information that you got to talk a little bit about. Whereas something like SynodCon, you take a very small slice and really get
Go
to
deep.
explore the depth of it. Yeah. And it's just so much fun. And that's where you start to get a taste of that super freak, like audio super freak stuff.
Oh, yeah.
It's so cool.
Using a piezo.
Yeah.
You know.
Yes.
So for the benefit of the listeners, right? We've touched on CTS, CTSI, CTSD. These are foundational, incredible foundational certifications that prepare you to be,
Yes.
leveraging industry best practices across, quite frankly, the wide disciplines that are installation and design within the industry. You kind of hit on audio, right? So it was a good question, and framing that for just a second. Okay, great. I've just got my CTSI, but now I want to go deeper, right? I want to go deeper on something. Audio is a perfect example, and that's where a industry association. Is it fair to say that SynodCon's an industry association? I guess they're not. I guess they're a company that provides training.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's right.
It's
It's
industry
not done
facing
by
training, but
committee. Yeah.
it's not an association, but it
Right.
is incredibly well known as basically the go-to if you want to take your audio knowledge to the next level and
Yes.
bring it down to the ground as well. It's not just, high level concepts, the type of stuff you get out of a classroom. It's really practical in
Yeah.
terms of being able to leverage that within your career as tuning audio systems, getting them prepared, being able to test them, being able to verify them, being
Yeah.
able to understand on a deep, deep level what's happening from an audio perspective, creating better outcomes. Yeah.
Yeah.
SynodCon's incredible,
Yeah.
incredible learning, but
And
only
isn't it
audio
interesting?
focused, right? They do audio at SynodCon, right?
Yes. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, but there's so much to audio. There's large room acoustics, there's modeling, there's EQ, there's intelligibility. It's dizzying, right? And they have different seminars on just oh, their catalog is so impressive, and it just goes on and on. They've curated so much information of just deep dive audio stuff that it's uh, it's just so wide. It's incredible.
All right. So if we've hit the audio side, where can you go for the video side? Is there a place to go to advance your knowledge in video without going to a manufacturer specific training?
Yeah, I mean, I think ISF,
Image Science
Image Science
Foundation.
Foundation. Yeah,
Yeah.
in my opinion, I think they're the go-to for video, where they just go into that deep dive on color balancing, on video technologies, on what's good, and I think that's Joel Silver and the Bronze, Alan and Jonathan Braun.
Oh, the Bronze are involved with ISF?
Yeah, yeah,
I didn't
yeah,
realize. I have never pursued ISF. That's been on the list for a long time, but I haven't been able to
yeah,
get to it.
yeah. And it's tough because we take video for granted. But man, and if you think about every time you see a video wall out there, like behind a newscaster or at an event or something like that, I mean, they're supposed to be pristine, right? But then if you've done a video wall before, you're always going to notice the panel that's a little bit out, and especially if they at the intersection, like if a face is spanning a couple of panels and then my top right quadrant is a little bit tanner or redder than my top left quadrant, I don't know if most people would notice it, or maybe they just expect it at this point, but it is a lot of people used to think it was an art to really dial that in. But no, it's a science, and that's been a myth that I've been trying to dispel for a long time, where people used to come in and you have to hire Joe to balance your video walls or your tiles because he's got the eye. And it's like, well, Joe's needed glasses for the past 5 years, and we have colorimeters for this stuff to make it a piece of cake. And then that's where you start to notice which manufacturers embrace the science of color balancing, the science of color measuring, because they're the ones who, when you buy their video walls, send out a colorimeter or some scientific objective method to make sure that the color is balanced in a single video wall, or when you have multiple displays in the same space. How frustrating is that when you've got two LCDs on the same wall and the colors are funky?
I won't name any names for certain, but to your point, right? Dispelling the idea that you can't put a number to these things and actually bring data to the equation. I remember installing we staged a video wall, and we had included the services from the manufacturer for calibration. And I was really excited because I'm like, yes, we're going to have the calibrator come out from the manufacturer. They're going to do it in our lab. I'm going to learn so much. It's going to be great. And they come out with the remote, and I'm like, okay, so what's your process? And the person is like, well, yeah, I pretty much just stand here and kind of eye it until they all look the same. And I'm like, no, that cannot be your process. That absolutely cannot be your process, right? And then there's other manufacturers where, oh yeah, no, here's a colorimeter. We've built custom software specifically for this. You can profile your displays. And so ISF, they do a good job of, and I'm asking because I don't have the direct experience, but I'm assuming they do a good job of giving you the tools necessary to bring data regardless of the manufacturer in question.
Yeah, they have certifications, and it's very similar to SynodCon in that they get into the science of the display technology. They teach you, OLED, QLED, LCD, all the different video technologies, when they're useful, when they're not. Screen gains, front projection screens, rear projection screens, how to really do it right, as well as how to calibrate it and make it look good. So they get into how to design video, how to install video, how to verify video.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's incredible that those two organizations provide that type of, non-specific, very specific, but non-manufacturer specific training that can be applied to everything, because Extron provides incredible video training, right? You learn so much, but there's also an element to it that is tailored towards their own products as well, as it should be. I mean, that's where you go. You want to learn how to, make Extron sing. That was maybe a bad analogy. It's more of an audio analogy, but you want to make
do audio too, buddy.
That's and control, and yeah, absolutely. But to the point, right? You want to make a particular manufacturer's products and solutions work their best. You go to the manufacturer to learn about those specific products. But what's powerful about having these non-product specific trainings is being able to bring that knowledge to everything, everywhere, anytime, because how often are we only working with one manufacturer in our industry?
Very rarely, right? I mean, that's the name of the game in AV integration, is you should be picking the right box for the particular job.
All right. Yeah. So we've hit AVIXA, we've hit SynodCon, we've hit Image Science Foundation. These
Network.
are kind of super technical things, right? They're technical staff focused. They're folks that are installing or designing systems. There are folks that are commissioning and testing and verifying these systems, right? Configuring the systems at the end of the day, all very tech focused. What else is there from the technology side to cover?
I think definitely network.
Yes.
Right. Um,
So let's hit on that. Where do you
yeah.
go? Where do you go? Well, I could certainly answer this question, but where do you go for network training?
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I know a few handsome gentlemen who are going to be teaching the NAVS class and at Infocom, and that's very exciting. But like we've been talking about, that is 3 days in depth ish, but it's a wide breadth, uh, but shallow stuff. So if you want to get deep, I don't know where would you go?
So yeah, and it's before we hit on that, it's credit to AVIXA. It's credit to AVIXA. Yep, $2. That's $2,
Mhm.
$2.50. It's credit to AVIXA that they've recognized the need for network specific training within our industry, right? So much of our product is sitting on the network at this point. My background is network, pure network. That's the world that I came from. So when I came into AV, right, everybody was starting to put Ethernet jacks on the back of their devices, and the AV industry was kind of freaking out a little bit because prior to that moment, it was a special subsystem low voltage network of cabling that made AV work. It didn't require being on the network, for it to work. And now today it does require network. So to answer the question, CompTIA
Mhm.
is a phenomenal non-manufacturer specific association business that provides training in IT, in computer hardware, network technology, network fundamentals, kind of to
Yeah.
your point again, wide and not medium depth. I would say, I wouldn't say shallow, right? Because it's hard to go shallow on network. There's a lot there to learn. Truly. So I would
Yeah.
say wide and medium depth, great foundational learning. Now
Well,
Cisco,
and CompTIA, are they the AVIXA of the IT world? Like, is that a safe statement?
I have to verify that actually. They might not be a nonprofit organization. They may be
Yeah, 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 yeah.
they may be a for no, you know what? They're nonprofit. So got it right here, looked it up. They are a nonprofit. It is fair to say that CompTIA would be an AVIXA-like organization for IT and networking. Absolutely.
Hmm.
What are you smiling about?
We have some gentlemen who have joined the show, in Justin and Tom Care, and Tom's coming in hot.
Oh, Tom Care, Mr. Care
Yes,
is coming in is coming in hot.
yes,
Oh, okay. So CompTIA, back to the point. Back
yes.
to the point. Get off social media, Jim.
Sorry,
Jeez.
sorry, sorry,
Yeah, no worries.
sorry.
So
Justin, Tom, we love
CompTIA,
you, but I'm
nonprofit
ready. I'm ready now.
organization, really there to help build IT skill sets. They have the Network Plus certification. Fantastic. I got my training initially at Cisco because when I started going to school for network training, that was where you went. You went
Yeah,
to Cisco. Cisco has phenomenal foundational training that applies to every network in the world. Granted, when it comes time to actually, put fingers on keys, you're working within Cisco's hardware, and you are definitely learning the Cisco flavored commands, but the underlying primary foundational technologies that you learn in CCNA, for example,
mhm,
is incredible and does set you up as a professional for almost everything you could need to know about networks within the AV industry,
yeah,
right? I don't want to say that, network pros out there go a whole lot farther than the CCNA and the CCIE. They go into security protocols, firewalls. Like there's a whole world of learning out there that is, again, like CompTIA's got some foundational stuff, and then you tend to go to the manufacturers to get the deeper knowledge.
yeah,
But CCNA, man, it still today is recognized as the kind of the go-to. You want to build your network muscles, and you want to come out the other side feeling confident that you're ready to talk the talk and interact with IT and network people about the network, a CCNA is an incredibly strong certification for that.
And it might be because I mean, arguably I'm in the IT industry ish, but I can't think of a more recognized certification than CCNA,
Yep.
right? I mean, I know CompTIA has them, but they don't carry the clout that Cisco's does.
They're not easy. The
Yeah.
certification is not easy. I will say. So that's good. That's covering network. And then to the point, right? AVIXA has recognized the need to bring that level of learning, or a subset of that level of learning, to their coursework, and created NAVs, right? Network for AV systems, and
Mm.
really helping make it more available for the AV industry to start training those AV muscles. Those network muscles, because everything we do is sitting on the network.
Yeah.
What else? What else on the tech side? So what about control?
That, man, I was racking my brain about that this week. I am sure that there are software development industry associations out there, but from my experience, it's really just been manufacturer training on that aspect, right? Like, they expect you to bring in good programming best practices, and they expect you to know about elegance and efficiency from your own background. But I've only heard of specific manufacturer certifications and training as it applies to AV. Have you heard differently, or?
Well, so yeah, I was gonna say, right? I think historically in our industry, there was two big powerhouses in the control system side. There's some new players in the game, so not discounting anything there, but I'm going back to the gray hairs, right? And dare I say Panja, right? AMX, Crestron, right? Those are the two big control houses. And while they did use object-oriented programming, it was still very, very proprietary. And if you wanted to learn how to do it, you went to them. You went and got certified by AMX. You went and got certified by Crestron. Now we're in a different age now. We are in a different age, and even within those manufacturers, I mean, they are starting to open up their APIs to full stack development, which means you're no longer having to develop inside of Crestron tools or develop inside of AMX tools anymore. You're able to leverage the development tool set that is a much larger, much wider industry that is also responsible for all the wonderful software applications that run our world at this point. And so the control world is starting to take a whole big pivot in terms of the types of people that can bring software to bear from an automation perspective. It used to be you were a specialized control system automation programmer, and now you've got full stack developers out there. You've got people that are programming in Python, people that are programming in JavaScript, people that are programming in all kinds of different languages. And there's the ability to bring that to bear when it comes to AV systems and control and automation across the board. So I don't know of an AV specific organization that you can go to get software development outside of, like, again, what we've already talked about. But that's the beauty of it. You can go take a more generalized software development path for any type of application programming, and now those skills are going to be transferable into the AV world and being able to use that for automation programming as well.
Yeah. And I thought it was a bold move. I mean, Crestron kind of flirted with C sharp, right? And they simple sharp and whatnot. But when Extron came out and said, yeah, if you want to do anything fancy, just do it in Python. And that's how we're going to roll with our current control systems. I thought it was wildly different, but at the same time kind of cool because it opened it up to like legit software developers, who could really get crazy with it.
Well, I
Yeah.
think Extron was ahead of their time with that, right? Because I think in a lot of cases, the AV industry was quite ready to pivot to full software development
Yeah.
mindset, and we're still getting there in my opinion,
Yeah.
to qualify that.
But I guess that's part of
But you
that's
are,
only
like, just to correct the comment you made, right? Crestron has released, virtual control. It is complete software server programming. It is not program. It is C# programming 100% within the Microsoft development toolkits, so that they're there, and it's happening quickly. It's happening
yeah.
very quickly. I mean, I've even heard that there's going to be some continued push towards open APIs on devices that in the past have been closed off to local ecosystems,
Mm.
which means you're going to be able to leverage really any sort of stack you want from a development perspective,
Wow.
and take control of those devices without having to be within a proprietary stack, so to speak.
Yeah. And I guess that's only dangerous if AV guys try to reinvent the wheel and get their, Crestron programmers to go out and learn Python or whatever new programming language instead of going after the people who have that really rich experience with that.
Now, to be
And trying to play catch up is going to be it's tricky.
yeah, but there's nobody else in the AV industry that's more suited for it than the control system programmers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's an
Yeah.
opportunity to expand that skill beyond just automation. Now, here's something to be said. Those control system programmers have been fighting AV systems for years and years and years. And that experience is incredibly important, right? You can get a software developer to program anything, but unless they understand how that experience needs to go for the user, right? And it's not just software, it's software that's interacting with physical devices in the real world that need to produce a particular experience. And that's where,
Yeah.
again, I would encourage the control system programmers and developers in our industry to find ways to start embracing, those broader development skill sets, because it's going to help you in all aspects of what you do, and even widen your skill set for future opportunities as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is the cool thing is that if people are doing proper control system specifications where they've got the UI with all the automation spelled out, that transition would be really easy because the experience is going to be in that UI, right? That's where you're going to spend the time. That's where you're going to spend the energy, is coming up with just a beautiful, elegant user interface, and then the under the hood stuff, that could be any language.
Right.
Farm it out to someone else, and as long as it's spelled out according to your, experience, best practices, your artistic approach to the problem, I think that's a great way to do it.
Yeah. Okay, so does that cover the tech? Does that cover the technology? We hit
I
audio,
think
we hit
so.
video, we hit network, we hit control. That's
Control.
kind of the how to install the stuff, how to design the stuff, how to set up audio, how to set up video, right? There's again, we're staying outside of the manufacturer specific as much as we
Mhm,
can,
mhm.
recognizing that we talked about Cisco there for a second. Okay, so how about project management? Let's go. This is like a transition where you're transitioning from pure tech focus to process and business process focused, and project management, right? What we always like to say is process management, right? It's a good way to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, PMI, right? They're the big dog in that yard.
They are, yeah. PMI, Project Management Institute, PMP. That's the
Mhm, mhm.
world global recognized certification for project management. And the beauty of project management is it traverses all industries. Every industry
Yeah.
benefits from the layered approach of PMI, and the concepts apply no matter what whether it's a software project, whether it's a construction project, whether it's an AV project. So yeah, but PMP's it's meaty. It's meaty. It takes a
Yeah.
lot, right? You know, to get
Well,
your
dense.
PMP, not only do you have to have, you know, a certain number of hours of training and then
Yeah.
validate, you know, test that you have, you know, assimilated the knowledge from that training. There's also hours requirement.
Yeah.
There's also hours. Yeah. Well, so Tom's like beating me to the punch a little bit here, which is fantastic through great quotes, which is awesome. But there's a lot of hours also required to get your PMP. So, you know, what can you do in the meantime? And you know, this is where I have to give a shout out to Brad Malone, right? So Brad Malone from Navigate Consulting,
Yes.
has been, you know, one of the largest proponents of professional project management within the AV industry for as long as I can remember. And again, he teaches for Infocom. He teaches a project management class and has taught a project management class for many, many years at the show. And that's the first introduction that I ever got to project management. I remember going to Brad Malone's class at Infocom one year and walked out of that class going, holy shit. I had no idea what project management was. I thought I did, but now I know that just how little I knew. And I was so excited to take those concepts back to the company and continue to build our project management office based on those. And that set me on the path for PMP. That set me on the path for PMI. That set me on the path for the pursuit of all things project management concept based. You were going to say something.
Tom, again, beat me to the punch, because I was going to say that if you want to talk about AV super freaks, or just super freaks in this AV world that we know, he legit interned with Deming, who is like a quality project management god. And so if you want to talk about pedigree, you know, yeah, like being two, what do they call it? Two, what's that Kevin Bacon game? 2 degrees from Deming through Brad. I mean, that is insane to me.
That is pretty wild. I mean, Deming
Yeah.
is like synonymous with quality, right?
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah.
it's totally
He's
synonymous.
the guy. He's the guy. He made Japan what it was after World War II.
From an automotive industry perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
To be detailed, right?
Yes. Crazy.
Yeah, so shout out to Brad Malone, because
Big
Brad
shout out.
Malone, yeah, Brad Malone's been bringing quality project management concepts and business process management to the commercial audiovisual industry for as long as I can remember, probably longer than I've even been involved in the industry. And shout out to Navigate, right? Navigate, because again, you know, project management, it's process management, it's business management. It starts to tie into business processes. It starts to tie into quality management. And actually, this might be a really good segue to, well, where do you go to handle quality? How is quality handled within our industry?
There are many ways, of course, but my personal favorite is AQAV and AV9000 and quality, bringing that quality management system mentality with AV specific language. I haven't seen anything better.
Well, let's expand upon that a little bit. What's AQAV?
Sure.
What's offered in the way of learning? You know, what can somebody expect to be able to pursue from a learning and professional development perspective?
Right. So we talked a lot about how to learn, how to design, how to install. But what is missing in a lot of the way people deliver AV is how to make sure that you fulfilled your contractual obligations, and that is quality management. That's quality assurance. It's you know, everyone does a really good job installing, everyone does a really good job designing, I'm absolutely sure. But then when you want to verify that, or kind of prove that to the client, you do so with AV9000. And a lot of people see it as quality control. There's a lot of iterative steps, so it flirts in that quality assurance realm as well. But it is really how you define when projects are complete. And so AQAV manages that standard. It's a process based standard of how to. So ISO 9000, right, is the internationally recognized standard of quality management. AV9000 is just an AV specific wrapper around ISO 9000, just to bring all that quality management ideal into the AV industry. And so AQAV manages that standard, manages the AV9000 standard of quality management for the AV industry. And then they also offer two and a half currently, possibly 3.5 soon, quality management certifications, individual certifications, I'll say. And so there's CQT, which is the certified quality technician, where you go to learn how to verify a system has been successfully installed, as well as CQD, certified quality designer, which is where you go to verify that a design will meet the user needs. And so that's how AQAV has split that up. And so those are there's also a CQL, which is a certified a quality leader, which is where executives and whatnot who are just kind of dipping their toes into the quality pool can learn about why we do that, and why this quality management stuff is so important. And so those are the individual certifications offered by AQAV, but there's also two company-wide, or I'll say location certifications, which is AV9000 compliant and AV9000 certification. And so the AV9000 compliant is a program that it's like a stepping stone to that AV9000 certification. So if you're AV9000 compliant, you swear that you are at least staging and commissioning every single one of your projects that leave your shop, and you provide evidence of that, and you provide evidence that you have the test equipment, and you provide evidence that the client has received these documents and has received successfully completed projects from your team. But if you want to take it a step further, that's AV9000 certification, where your company gets ISO 9000 certified, as well as integrate that AV specific wrapper into your quality management manual, and that's like the premier certification, company-wide certification from AQAV.
One of my favorite things is just how much process and evidence focus is around AV9000, right? Like there's a lot of great quality out there, but it's being able to look at the body of work. It's being able to look at the evidence that the process was applied, that the discipline was applied throughout the life cycle of the system. So that was a great overview. And I'll just say, one of the things I love about this industry is there is an opportunity to never stop learning. There is so much knowledge to be gained within this industry so would you describe CQT, CQD as technical certifications?
They are technical for sure.
To verify systems are installed appropriately, commissioned, and configured appropriately.
Yeah.
There's an element of needing to understand the underlying technical aspects of that. You can't just
and especially the CQT, that there's a hands-on aspect to the certification. CQD, it's I guess technically hands-on. You're doing the calculations, you're using the spreadsheet, so it does get very technical for sure. A lot of math in both.
Is it safe to say that as a CQ, let's saying on the CQD, the design side, does it teach you how to design, or does it expect that you already have that design knowledge coming into the class?
No, I don't know that a CTSD is a prerequisite, but certainly design experience is a prerequisite for the class. Yeah, you're expected to come in with design experience, design know-how. This is just how to verify that the designs you're putting out will meet your performance specifications and satisfy the user needs.
Well, and I would almost argue that while CTSD might not be a hard requirement, it's the only place that I know to go where you learn how to put numbers to your design, and having spent some quality time in the classroom with a group of engineers that maybe hadn't taken any CTSD classes and thought that they would take the CTSD prep and just be able to pass the class, it's a sobering moment to realize that there's a fair amount of quantifying your designs with numbers that is a requirement for ensuring you're able to measure and test that on the actual delivery of that system. So CTSD for me was the most prolific certification I ever received in my life. I learned more from that certification than any other certification I got, and I was blown away because while I wasn't necessarily a dedicated designer, I was focused on project management. The knowledge that I gained from CTSD made me such a better project manager, such a better installer, every aspect of my career was improved upon by CTSD. It made me a better customer facing representative. It was just incredible because, again, it took so much guesswork out. It allowed you to start to truly quantify and put numbers to why and give really good standard responses to why we might do something, as opposed to it's my opinion and it's going to look good,
That was also one of the most fun classes I think I've taken in AV. I think we said at the beginning it was a 2-week in-depth thing. You were up until like 1 a.m. working on your individual projects, working on your group projects, and I met people in that class who I think I took 18 years ago, and I still see them. I still say hello to them. We're still really close just because of that experience. It was magical. It was really, really cool.
Well, Tom Kerr was my primary CTSD teacher, man. When Mr. Power, it cracks me up because I went and did the AV math.
Power and ground, yeah, man.
I went and took the AV math class recently, and there's all these videos of animated, 2D Tom talking about power, which is the best. Please, AVIXA, never take those down. They are amazing.
Never ever.
Okay,
Tom's a legend, man.
He is a legend. Well, we're at like an hour already.
I know, dude.
And we could talk about more certifications, right? So I just quickly, before we jump off, I want to touch on NSCA.
Yes, of course.
Here's another industry association, and I actually recently talked to them, and it was really cool to have a conversation with them because I asked them the question. I said, hey, how does your training compare to AVIXA's training?
Mm-hmm.
And the response back was, AVIXA is really focused more on the individual, and NSCA's training tends to be more focused on the business, right? So it's business learning, business processes, business type resources, which I thought was awesome. And I said, well, how nicely complementary is that in our industry, smart, right? And it's worth noting, like, we focus so much on technology and technical training. All of this is still a business. You have to run a business, right? There's a lot of business knowledge and skill sets that are required to be a successful business person, to be a successful business. So it's not just AV specific technical training, while is very important to deliver and execute on the product and the solution, there's a number of other skill sets that are needed to ensure that your business can be successful. So shout out to NSCA. We hit on SynodCon, we hit on ISF, we've hit on PMI, and I think we got to give a shout out to YouTube also. YouTube is like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
what do you want to learn?
Exactly. It's like the Matrix, man. And listen, a lot of it is terrible, but there are super specific gems that can be found on YouTube at 2 a.m. Anytime you need it, it's there. And I always think it's funny because I think that's a big difference between digital natives and us newcomers to this whole web thing, is that digital natives will just be like, yeah, I got a question, I am going to ask YouTube because they know all. Whereas, us newcomers are kind of like, oh, yeah, I got to call someone. I got to call a manufacturer. I got to pick up an actual phone, talk to someone.
They've already figured it out. They've
Yeah,
already figured it out.
exactly. Yeah,
With
they
live
skipped
video.
the intro,
Yeah.
got to the
Oh
meat
man.
and solved it.
Yeah, 100%. So I threw up the slide real quick just so that everybody, big shout out to the companies that we touched on today. Navigate, we talked about Navigate, which again, Navigate, great project management, great business consulting at that business level, how to effectively run a AV business, an AV services business. There is so much learning available out there, and I would encourage everyone, there are people and incredible, talented mentors in this industry that have been, hammering away at the same problems that everybody else is hammering away at. And one of the best ways to get yourself there faster is to go seek that knowledge from other people. So huge shout out to every single company on this slide and every other company and manufacturer that is taking the time to memorialize training and provide it to the industry in a structured way and bring people along. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, these are the folks that elevate the industry, right? And you don't just do things because that's the way we've always done it, or that's the way Joey taught me, when I was coming up. These are the people who teach you how to justify it, how to explain why we do things. So if we want more respect in the construction industry, if we want to elevate the AV industry to that next level, these are the people we should be dealing with.
Jim, wow, we blew through that hour. I had a lot of fun talking about professional development, and what a great follow-up to last month's episode. Like, how do you go about it? Where do you go? Where are the places to go seek that knowledge and start your path of learning? So, and thank you for another incredible hour of time.
Absolutely, man. This was awesome.
All right. Well, I think with that, we'll let the listeners go and look to see you again next month.
Yeah, and if you're watching us on Facebook or YouTube, please like and subscribe. It helps us out tremendously. And guess that's it, man.
Awesome. Have a good night.
Have an AV day.
Bye.